Breaking news. Ukraine wiped out a massive Russian oil refinery in Donetsk. It's January 1st, 2026, and the battlefield is changing faster than ever.
Subscribe to Defense Reports, your go-to source for timely, in-depth military and defense reports.
I'm Alex.
And I'm Aria.
Welcome to the latest Deep Dive by Defense Report, where we give you sharp, no-nonsense breakdowns of the latest in global defense news, military technology, and strategic developments.
And today we're covering something big.
If the year 2025 was all about the massive escalation of drones in modern warfare, then what we just saw over the New Year's period, from late December right into January 1st, that felt like a strategic detonation.
It really did. We're looking at a highly synchronized series of deep strikes. These didn't just expand the combat zone. They targeted the very structural integrity of Russia's economic rear.
A true shift in strategy.
Absolutely. What's fascinating here is that the Ukrainian general staff, they're using these sophisticated domestically produced long-range UAVs, and they're executing what they call a systemic interdiction. I mean, it's a campaign aimed right at Russia's logistical and economic backbone.
So this isn't attrition anymore.
No, this is strategic debilitation.
And that's our mission for this deep dive. We've compiled the confirmed intel from the General Staff of the AFU, Independent Satellite Analysis, and reports on the specialized units responsible to give you the full picture.
We are going to unpack not just what was hit, but why. Why these specific energy and logistics targets are, Russia's Achilles heel now more than ever.
So for you, the learner, this is all about context. It's about how this technological maturity is fundamentally reshaping the high-stakes, long-term nature of this conflict.
Exactly. It shows what happens when the fight moves 500, 800, even 1,000 kilometers behind the front lines.
Okay, let's jump right into the New Year's Blitz. Because these were not random hits. This was a highly concentrated effort focused on critical infrastructure, particularly in Krasnodar Krai.
Which is just essential for supplying Russia's entire southern military grouping.
Right.
We saw multiple simultaneous high-value strikes confirmed by the general staff. And if we look at that cluster around Krasnodar, the absolute primary target was the Tuapse oil refinery.
And Tuapse it's massive. It's one of Russia's top 10 refineries, isn't it?
It is. It's a huge export-oriented plant. We're talking a capacity of 12 million tons of petroleum products a year. And crucially, the strike reportedly achieved a surgical hit on the facility's most vital piece of equipment.
The primary processing unit.
The primary oil processing unit, the ELOU AVT-12.
Okay, hold on. For those of us less familiar with refining jargon, what does that unit actually do? And why is hitting that specific piece of machinery so devastating?
Think of it as the brain and spinal column of the entire plant. The ELOU AVT is the atmospheric and vacuum distillation component. It's where crude oil is first heated and separated into its core products: gasoline, diesel, jet fuel, all of it.
So if you take this out,
you don't just reduce capacity, you halt the fundamental ability of the refinery to process crude into usable military-grade products.
So hitting the ELOU AVT-12, rather than just a storage tank, makes this a long-term strategic blow. You're destroying the ability to produce, not just holding up distribution.
Exactly. And the location matters, too. Tuapse is crucial for the military. It supplies fuel and lubricants for Russia's southern ground forces and, critically, the Black Sea Fleet. Suspending operations there is a tactical headache and a huge strategic liability.
But the strikes didn't stop at production. They also hit the distribution network in that same region.
They absolutely did. A second high-value target was the Temeneftagaz oil terminal, still in Krasnodar Krai. This is a major hub for storage and transshipment of oil products for export through the Black Sea.
And we have confirmed damage.
Confirmed reports. Damage inflicted on 2 piers and their loading arms, basically putting key maritime infrastructure out of action.
So it's a coordinated 1-2 punch. You take out the primary distillation column at Tuapse, and then you damage the ability to export or distribute the product at the terminal.
And we also saw confirmed strikes on 2 other regional facilities, the Ilich and Ilsky oil refineries, just to ensure maximum systemic impact on that whole energy cluster.
But the real attention grabber, in terms of sheer distance, was the successful hit far to the north. I mean, we're talking about a facility nearly 1,000 kilometers from the border.
That would be the Temp Oil Depot in Rybinsk, Yaroslav Oblast. This is, about 160 miles north of Moscow itself?
Incredible.
The distance is remarkable, but the target selection is just as sharp. Temp is managed by Rosreserve.
That's Russia's Strategic Reserves Agency, right? They manage everything from grain to vital fuels for military needs.
Precisely. It's the national stockpile. So successfully hitting a strategic fuel storage facility like this, yes, it causes a major fire, but it fundamentally disrupts the operational planning for the entire supply chain across northeastern Russia. It's a huge statement.
Okay, let's unpack this larger strategic concept. When you look at the map TWAPs for processing, TEMIN for export, TEMIN for storage, you see this clear, intense focus on oil infrastructure. Why oil? Why is this the chosen Achilles heel?
Because the Ukrainian strategic concept has shifted. It's moved from simple interdiction to systemic destruction. It's about targeting centers of gravity where the damage just compounds over time.
And the rationale is threefold.
It is. The first and most obvious is simple economic attrition, hitting them in the wallet.
Makes sense.
The explicit goal is massive financial damage. The sources we're looking at suggest combined losses from these deep strikes exceeded $21.5 billion since the start of 2025 alone. That is a staggering drain.
But, as you pointed out with that ELOU AVT unit, the damage goes beyond just lost revenue. This is where Western sanctions really deliver a long-term punch.
That is the critical strategic insight here. When you hit primary processing units like the one at TWAPs, you inflict structural damage that is almost impossible to repair without access to specialized Western equipment manufacturers.
And why can't Russia just turn to, say, China or India to supply these parts? I mean, surely distillation columns aren't unique to the West.
The issue is precision and certification. These complex units for high-grade fuel are bespoke, precision-engineered installations. They often require the original vendor's specialized technicians and unique tools to install and calibrate.
So even if they could source a replacement part?
Even if they could, which is tough due to sanctions, integrating it safely into the existing system is another story. The sanctions make getting that technical support nearly impossible, essentially freezing the facilities in a state of operational paralysis.
So it's not a fire you put out in a few weeks. It's a non-repairable structural wound that hobbles their ability to produce refined fuel for months, maybe even years.
It creates a scarcity of high-grade fuel that directly impacts the military and, it risks destabilizing their domestic market. The Kremlin has to choose: supply the front lines or keep the domestic economy from collapsing.
Okay, so we have economic attrition and structural damage. What's the third objective?
Air defense dilution. By hitting assets 160 miles north of Moscow, like they did in Rybinsk, Ukraine forces the Russian military to make very difficult choices.
They have to pull back their best systems.
Exactly. They have to divert scarce, advanced air defense systems like the Tor M2, even S-400 batteries away from the front lines to protect these high-value industrial assets deep in the rear.
It's classic asymmetric warfare. A cheap, domestically produced drone forces Russia to spend a priceless, high-tech S-400 battery defending an oil depot instead of troops.
And it degrades their overall defensive shield everywhere else.
Now, this level of planning, hitting distillation columns, logistics piers, strategic reserves all at once, it requires incredible organization and intelligence. Who is actually pulling these missions off?
That task falls primarily to a very specialized, highly secretive formation. The first separate Unmanned Systems Center.
Formerly the 14th Regiment. They've really become the vanguard here.
They have. Sources indicate they are responsible for about 80 to 90% of all deep strikes inside Russia and occupied territories. That concentration of expertise, it shows a highly coordinated strategic approach. This isn't just scattered teams.
So they're executing a defined blueprint.
The unit's head, Commander Charlie, he confirmed this. He explained they don't operate ad hoc. Their efforts are carried out in carefully planned waves based on specific strategic tasks.
We've seen this before.
Or you have. There were waves aimed specifically at strategic artillery arsenals, like the big depot hit at Toropets in September 2024. And then separate waves dedicated to crippling air bases, hitting places like Kalino in August 2024.
So the model is identify a weakness, mass your assets, hit it across multiple nodes until you achieve the desired effect, and then shift to the next target.
That's the operational model. And the massive expansion of this is all enabled by technological maturation. Commander Charlie notes that about 90% of the drones they use are now domestically produced. Platforms like the Long Range and 196 Lududi.
And that domestic production gives them operational freedom and scale. They aren't tied to foreign supply chains.
It allows for the massive surge he cited, expanding operations dozens of times throughout 2025. And if you want a sense of the future threat, he delivered a rather provocative statement.
What did he say?
He indicated that a night when 1,000 Ukrainian drones attack Russia simultaneously could come quite soon. It's a clear signal that this deep strike campaign is only set to accelerate in 2026.
1,000 drones in a single night.
Estimate.
That's an impossible air defense scenario for the defenders who are already stretched thin. It shows immense confidence in their manufacturing.
And in their targeting.
Okay, here's where it gets really interesting. We've covered the high-level strategic targets deep inside Russia. But let's shift closer to the front lines, to the Donetsk theater, where these strikes translate into immediate tactical blows.
Yes, because the logistics chain running into Donetsk is the lifeblood of Russia's ground effort in the east, and the New Year's period saw some truly critical hits there.
The strike near Ilovaisk must have been keenly felt.
Oh, absolutely. Ilovaisk is a monumental piece of infrastructure, a major railway junction. It's the primary transshipment point for military supplies entering that whole theater. The General Staff confirmed a fire that destroyed the fuel and lubricants depot of the Russian 51st Army right there.
So you hit the fuel storage right at the railway hub, you stop the trains, and you cripple the mobility for armored units all at once.
It is a critical logistical blow, and it comes at the worst possible time for Russian forces as they're trying to maintain their winter offensive toward places like Pokrovsk. Without that fuel, the offensive just grinds to a halt.
And they also went after one of the resources Russia uses to attack Ukrainian civilians, their own drone hub.
Yes, the former Donetsk International Airport. Russian forces had repurposed the grounds as a key storage, equipping, and launch prep hub for their Jurin or Shahid-type drones.
And the strike wasn't just a pot shot at an empty airfield.
No, the operation by the first center targeted the entire functional ecosystem. That means logistics hubs, pre-flight sites, the central warhead storage, and significantly concentration points for the technical personnel who service the drones.
Targeting the personnel. That suggests near real-time, granular intelligence.
It absolutely does. The success of that strike means they temporarily neutralized a critical hub for Russia's aerial strike capacity in that whole sector. We also saw confirmed losses of other hardware, like a Tor-M2 anti-aircraft system near Shevchenko. These tactical strikes just compound the difficulty of the Russian push.
They do. However, as we synthesize all this for you, the listener, we have to acknowledge the symmetrical reality of this. This escalation is two-sided. While Ukraine hits Russia's oil, Russia has simultaneously intensified its own strikes against Ukraine's energy sector, with devastating results.
We have to put that in context. In October 2025, Russian strikes wiped out over half of Ukraine's domestic gas production. A huge hit.
Right before winter.
It's worse. By November 2025, one of Russia's largest ever combined attacks forced the suspension of operations at all of Ukraine's state-owned thermal power plants. This is the same strategy in reverse, aiming to collapse the economy's functionality.
So what does this all mean for the immediate future?
It means these Ukrainian deep strikes, both strategic at the refineries and tactical at Ilovaisk, are the key tool for undermining the longevity of the Russian military effort. Russia is taking high casualties, and making the occupation exponentially more expensive is Ukraine's way of applying constant pressure.
And yet, despite the massive cost, Russian commanders like General Gerasimov continue to publicly reaffirm their maximalist war aims. Seizure of all annexed oblasts.
And that raises the really provocative question for 2026. In a war now defined by economic attrition and technological parity, will this successful deep strike campaign be enough to change Moscow's political calculus?
Or will 2026 just see an acceleration of this destructive symmetry, where both economies degrade in parallel with no end in sight?
That is the strategic challenge now facing Kyiv and its partners.
That shift in strategic initiative, moving the battlefield hundreds of miles into the enemy's industrial heartland, is the key takeaway here. Ukraine is using its growing, domestically produced unmanned capabilities to fundamentally challenge Russia's security, forcing the cost of this aggression to an unprecedented high. You've been listening to Defense Report by Alex and Aria, where we analyze the latest in military strategy, global defense, and advanced weaponry.
Subscribe to Defense Reports, your go-to source for timely, in-depth military and defense reports. We'll catch you next time.